Chapter 1. The Discovery. The moment the car wash attendant fished a crumpled silk stocking from beneath my passenger seat, my blood ran cold. It was definitely my girlfriend's, a delicate shade of lavender I'd gifted her just last week. But there was one glaring problem. I hadn't driven my car in days. My mind raced. I was on a business trip this past week, leaving my car in my girlfriend, Lu Riyue's care. Today, she wasn't home, so I decided to give the car a much-needed wash, only to be met with this unsettling discovery. As the attendant diligently scrubbed away, I couldn't shake the image of the stocking. It was twisted, wrinkled, and stained with something I couldn't quite place, something that sent a shiver down my spine. The moment I got home, I rushed to my car in the underground parking lot, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. I popped open the dashcam footage, already dreading what I might find. The next 30 minutes were a blur of agony. The dashcam audio painted a vivid, horrifying picture. It was Ryue, all right, but her voice, it was filled with a wantonness I'd never heard before. And the man's voice, husky and low, sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. "Tell me, who's better, me or your husband?" The man panted, his words laced with arrogance. "You, of course," Ryue breathed, her voice dripping with a honeyed sweetness that turned bitter in my ears. "That old hag? I can't stand the sight of her." The words that followed were a torrent of explicit descriptions, comparing Ryue favorably to his wife, each syllable a hammer blow to my gut. Then came the gut punch. "How do I compare to your husband?" The man chuckled. "Why compare a man to an ATM?" Ryue giggled. "An ATM. That's all I was to her. A source of money." Rage, hot and blinding, surged through me. I listened in numb horror as their tryst concluded. Ryue asked, "Are you heading back to the company soon, senpai?" Senpai. It all clicked into place. Chun Jifeng, her manager at work, a senior from their university, a married man with a seemingly perfect life. The realization that Ryue was sleeping with him, someone I considered a decent guy, sent a fresh wave of betrayal crashing over me. I spent the next hour in my car, chain-smoking, trying to process the maelstrom of emotions swirling within me. When Ryue finally called, her voice was light and carefree, asking where I was and why I'd taken the car. "Just got it washed," I replied, forcing my voice to remain steady. "Oh, really? Why the sudden urge?" she asked, a hint of nervousness creeping into her tone. "It's the weekend. Thought I'd treat the car," I said casually. "Well, hurry back, okay?" Before getting out of the car, I shoved the stocking back under the passenger seat, a seed of an idea taking root in my mind. Back home, I pretended nothing happened. Ryue, however, seemed flustered, claiming she might have left her lipstick in the car. "I'll help you look," I offered, masking my true intentions. No need. I know where it is," she said, rushing out with the car keys. I watched her go, a humorless smile playing on my lips. 10 minutes later, she returned, noticeably more relaxed. "All right, honey," she chirped. "My parents are coming to the city next week. They want to have dinner with us, to discuss the wedding." Wedding. The irony wasn't lost on me. All I could think about was her calling me an ATM, her moans and gasps echoing in my ears. The next day, the stocking and the dashcam footage were gone. But I had made backups. It was time for revenge. Chapter 2. The Seeds of Revenge. My first target was, of course, Chun Jifeng. I dug into his background, discovering that he wasn't just a husband and father, but a man who meticulously cultivated a pristine image. He was the affable boss, the doting husband, the dedicated father, a poster boy for success. This only fueled my rage. I hired a private investigator to tail him for a few days. While we didn't catch him with Ryue, we did uncover another layer of his hypocrisy. He was also keeping a college student as a mistress, showering her with gifts in a swanky apartment. Disgust churned in my stomach. This man was a master manipulator, playing the perfect family man while indulging in his desires. I decided to start small, just a taste of the chaos I planned to unleash. I got myself a burner phone and began calling Chun Jifeng every night at 2 a.m., remaining silent when he answered. After 3 nights of this, he erupted in a torrent of curses before blocking the number. Undeterred, I used the same number to send his wife a simple text message. Old hag. I didn't know if she confronted him, but Chun Jifeng was clearly on edge. He started calling the burner phone, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. "Who the hell is this?" he roared in one. "What do you want? Stop harassing us, or I'm calling the police." The irony wasn't lost on me. Could he really go to the police with this? My little game of cat and mouse was working perfectly. Chun Jifeng stopped going to work, likely dealing with the fallout at home. I saw him texting Ryue, feigning concern as a colleague and asking why he wasn't in the office. He ignored her messages. Unsurprisingly, he was a mess at dinner with Ryue's parents. He barely spoke, his eyes glued to his phone, his usual confidence replaced with a nervous energy. A few drinks in, Ryue's father, fueled by alcohol and oblivious to the turmoil brewing beneath the surface, turned to me. "Chiyunfei," he slurred. "We're so happy you two are getting married. Our Ryue, she's been pampered her whole life. We've worked hard to give her the best. All we want is for her to marry well, someone who'll cherish and protect her." "Of course, uncle," I said, nodding earnestly. "I'll take good care of Ryue. I'd never let her down." Ryue's mother, a woman who wore her ambition on her designer sleeve, chimed in. "We've been thinking about the dowry," she began, her voice carefully neutral. "For a girl like Ryue, educated, beautiful, with a good job, it's customary." She held up 2 fingers. I knew she wasn't talking about 20,000 yuan. Even 200,000 yuan was a lowball, considering their expectations. I'd done my research. Of course, I agreed, playing the part of the agreeable fiancé. "She's a catch. Our Ryue," her father interjected, patting my shoulder with a meaty hand. "You're a lucky man." "That's why," I interrupted, a plan forming in my mind. "My parents and I have decided to offer a dowry of 500,000 yuan. What do you think, Uncle Annie?" The room went silent. Ryue's mother dropped her teacup, her eyes wide. Even Ryue, who had been strangely subdued all evening, looked up in shock. 500,000? Her father sputtered, his face flushed. I reached for Ryue's hand, my touch gentle despite the storm raging inside me. "Ryue is kind, intelligent, and beautiful. You've raised a wonderful daughter. This is the least I can do to show my sincerity." Ryue's parents were ecstatic. They showered me with praise, their earlier reservations forgotten. They were blinded by the promise of wealth, completely oblivious to the icy rage simmering beneath my carefully constructed facade. Let them celebrate, I thought, a cruel smile playing on my lips. The higher they climb, the harder they fall. Chapter 3. The Illusion of Reconciliation. That night, Ryue was unusually affectionate, her usual aloofness replaced with a desperate neediness. I played along, my touch mechanical, my mind a million miles away. The thought of her betrayal, her words calling me an ATM, choked any genuine emotion. The next day, I picked a fight with her, something insignificant about household chores. In the past, I would have been the first to apologize, showering her with gifts and affection to smooth things over. This time, I held my ground, refusing to back down. Ryue was bewildered. She'd grown accustomed to my easy forgiveness, my willingness to appease her every whim. This new, assertive version of me, the one who dared to point out her flaws, was unsettling. "Chiyunfei, you're yelling at me?" she shrieked, her voice laced with disbelief. "How dare you?" "Yelling?" I scoffed. "If I could get away with it, I'd shake you silly. We're getting married, Ryue. It's time you grew up and stopped acting like a spoiled child." With that, I stormed out, leaving her speechless and fuming. The Cold War had begun. For days, we barely spoke. Ryue, used to getting her way, seemed genuinely surprised that I wasn't crawling back to her, begging for forgiveness. Finally, she cracked. She called, her voice small and hesitant, apologizing for her behavior. I accepted her apology with a coldness that surprised even me. I'd played the part of the doting boyfriend for so long that even I had started to believe it. But the mask had slipped, revealing the bitterness that now festered within. Ryue, however, seemed to interpret my coldness as a challenge. She moved in with a friend, her parents calling me, pleading for reconciliation. "She's heartbroken, Chiyunfei," her mother lamented. She realizes she was wrong. "Please, don't throw away 2 years of love over a silly argument." Love. The word felt like a foreign language. I'd seen the messages on our shared tablet, the ones confirming her rendezvous with Chun Jifeng at a nearby hotel. I knew exactly where she was and with whom. "I'll think about it, Annie," I said, my voice carefully neutral. The truth was, I had already begun to orchestrate my next move. I'd contacted the college student Chun Jifeng was seeing, offering her a chance for revenge. I showed her the evidence I'd gathered, assuring her that Chun Jifeng wouldn't dare go to the police. She, in turn, introduced me to her boyfriend, a tall, lanky guy with a quiet intensity. He was more than happy to help, his anger at Chun Jifeng palpable. "Just tell me what you need," he said, his voice low and dangerous. I smiled, a plan taking shape in my mind. It was time to teach both Ryue and Chun Jifeng a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. Chapter 4. The Tables Turn. I resumed contact with Ryue, carefully crafting an illusion of remorse. I showered her with apologies, blaming my outburst on work stress and promising to be a better man. I even agreed to her parents' ridiculous demand of finding her brother a new, better job, knowing full well it was an empty promise. "It's your brother, soon to be my brother," I said to her parents, my voice dripping with false sincerity. Family comes first. They were over the moon, their greed blinding them to the truth. I was playing them like a virtuoso, each interaction another note in my symphony of revenge. Ryue, starved for affection and security, lapped it up. She returned home, her initial coldness thawing as I continued my charade. I even started taking her to see apartments, playing the part of the doting fiancé, ready to provide her with everything she'd ever desired. "It's your home, Ryue," I'd say, my voice earnest. "Whatever you choose, we'll buy it." She, of course, played the part of the discerning princess, never fully satisfied, always wanting to see just one more. But beneath the facade, I saw the glimmer of excitement, the anticipation of finally securing her gilded cage. Meanwhile, Chen Jifeng was starting to unravel. He suspected Ryue's involvement in his sudden misfortunes, sending her frantic messages, accusing her of exposing their affair and orchestrating the harassment. Ryue, predictably, played the victim, lashing out at him for his lack of trust and accusing him of using her. Their once passionate affair was now a toxic cocktail of suspicion and resentment. "You were the one who pursued me," she texted him angrily. "Now you're acting like I forced myself on you." Their final text exchange was a vicious shouting match, ending with both of them vowing to never contact each other again. It was all falling into place beautifully. Then, Ryue approached me, her eyes shining with excitement. "Honey, my company is having a big exhibition this Saturday. Can you pick me up afterwards?" she asked, her voice sweet as honey. "And Sunday, we have to be at the apartment complex early. The best units always go fast." I smiled, a chill running down my spine. This Saturday, Ryue was going to get a taste of her own medicine. Chapter 5. Public Humiliation. Saturday arrived, a day I had meticulously orchestrated to deliver the final blow. I drove Ryue to the exhibition hall, a sense of grim satisfaction settling over me. She was dressed to impress in a lavender business suit, her skirt hugging her curves, her makeup flawless. "Don't wait around," she said, her voice betraying a hint of nervousness as she applied another coat of lipstick. "It's going to be a long day." "Of course. I'll be here whenever you're done," I replied, my voice a soothing balm to her anxieties. But I had no intention of leaving. I watched from a distance as she took her place at the booth. Her job, to charm potential clients with her beauty and carefully rehearsed sales pitch. Chen Jifeng, looking pale and haggard, was also present, his eyes darting around nervously. I snapped a picture of him, a cruel smile playing on my lips. It was showtime. Using the burner phone, I sent a message to Chen Jifeng's wife. "Old hag," it began, echoing my earlier taunts. "He doesn't love you. He says you're old, boring, and frigid. I almost feel sorry for you." I followed it up with a voice recording, a particularly incriminating snippet of their conversation from the dashcam footage. Her response was almost instantaneous, a string of furious calls that I ignored. I sent another message, this time with a picture of Chen Jifeng. "Don't worry," I wrote, "he'll be late tonight. Maybe he won't even come home at all. We haven't decided if we're doing it in the car or a hotel this time." The trap was sprung. Ryue was in her element, her voice smooth and confident as she extolled the virtues of whatever product her company was peddling. She was good, I'd give her that. But her carefully constructed facade was about to crumble. A figure stormed into the exhibition hall, her face contorted with rage. It was Chen Jifeng's wife, and she was headed straight for Ryue. "You homewrecker," she screamed, her voice echoing through the hall. Before Ryue could react, a hand connected with her cheek, the sharp crack of the slap silencing the room. Ryue stumbled, her carefully styled hair coming undone. "How dare you sleep with my husband?" Chen Jifeng's wife shrieked, grabbing Ryue's hair and landing another blow. Ryue screamed, trying to shield herself, her composure shattered. The crowd, initially stunned into silence, began to murmur, some moving to intervene. Chen Jifeng, his face ashen, stood frozen, his carefully crafted mask of composure cracking. "That's her? The mistress. She's so young. What does she see in that old man? Some people have no shame going after a married man." The whispers, fueled by morbid curiosity, grew louder, adding to the spectacle. I watched it all unfold, my phone recording every second. Ryue, her face red and tear-streaked, tried to defend herself. "I don't even know you," she cried, her voice choked with tears. I have a boyfriend. We're getting married. Married. Chen Jifeng's wife laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. You're delusional. My husband said you threw yourself at him, that you wouldn't leave him alone. Ryue's eyes widened in disbelief, her gaze darting to Chen Jifeng, who was now trying to placate his wife. Honey, please, he pleaded, his voice shaking. Let's go home and talk about this. It's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like, his wife spat, shoving her phone in his face. Explain this then. The messages, the voice recording, it was all there for everyone to see. Chen Jifeng's face drained of all color. It's not true, he stammered, his eyes darting around the room, desperate for an escape. She's lying. She's obsessed with me. I never encouraged her. He was pathetic, a desperate man trying to salvage his shattered reputation. But it was too late. The damage was done. I watched as the scene descended further into chaos, a sense of grim satisfaction washing over me. This was just the beginning. Chapter 6, The Fallout. The crowd, initially sympathetic to Ryue's denials, now looked at her with suspicion. Chen Jifeng's impassioned, if unconvincing, performance had planted seeds of doubt. The whispers started again, this time laced with judgment. Maybe he's telling the truth. She does seem a bit desperate. Poor wife. Imagine finding out like this. Ryue, backed into a corner, lashed out, her composure cracking under the weight of scrutiny. He's lying, she screamed, her voice raw with desperation. He's the one who seduced me. He said he didn't love his wife, that he wanted to be with me. Chen Jifeng recoiled, as if she'd slapped him. You're insane, he shouted, his face contorted with rage. I was trying to protect you, to spare your reputation, but you're nothing but a manipulative. He stopped abruptly, his eyes widening, as if realizing he'd gone too far. But the damage was done. The crowd gasped, their attention now glued to the unfolding drama. I saw my opportunity. It was time to deliver the final blow. I slipped through the crowd, my phone still recording, and approached Ryue, my voice a low murmur in the cacophony. You forgot to mention, I said, my voice laced with mock sympathy, how he badmouths everyone at the company. How he calls the CEO an incompetent fool, his secretary a glorified intern riding on her family's coattails, and the marketing team a bunch of lazy good-for-nothings. Ryue's eyes widened in horror. She lunged for my phone, but I was too quick. I stepped back, a triumphant smirk playing on my lips. The crowd, now fully invested in the spectacle, erupted in a frenzy of whispers and gasps. Chen Jifeng, his face ashen, turned on Ryue, his eyes blazing with fury. You bitch, he roared, lunging for her. Security guards, alerted to the commotion, finally intervened, separating the warring parties. Chen Jifeng's wife, her face a mask of cold fury, stood back, watching the scene unfold with a detached satisfaction. I slipped away in the chaos. My work here done? The aftermath was swift and brutal. Chen Jifeng, his reputation in tatters, was forced to resign from the company. Rumors of his infidelity and corruption spread like wildfire, making him a pariah in his own industry. His wife, true to her word, filed for divorce, demanding sole custody of their children and leaving him with nothing but the clothes on his back. Ryue, her carefully crafted image shattered, didn't fare much better. She became the subject of office gossip, her colleagues avoiding her like the plague. She tried to salvage her job, but the damage was irreparable. She was forced to resign, her dreams of a comfortable life funded by a wealthy husband crumbling around her. I watched it all unfold from a distance, a sense of grim satisfaction settling over me. They had played their games, and now they were paying the price. That evening, I gathered Ryue's parents, her brother, her closest friends, and a few unsuspecting relatives at my apartment. I decorated the living room with candles and rose petals, hired a musician, and even bought a fake diamond ring online. When Ryue arrived, her face still bearing the marks of the day's events, she was greeted with a chorus of "Marry him" and a teary-eyed proposal. It was the perfect setup, a cruel parody of the future I had once envisioned with her. And then, I played the recording. Chapter 7. The Proposal That Never Was. The recording played out in the stunned silence of the room. Ryue's panicked voice a stark contrast to the romantic music still playing softly in the background. Her friends and family, initially caught up in the orchestrated emotion of the proposal, shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between me and a pale, trembling Ryue. Her mother, ever the pragmatist, was the first to break the silence. She snatched the phone from my hand, her face hardening as she watched the scene unfold on the small screen. The color drained from her face as she recognized her daughter, clad only in a towel, cowering from Chen Jifeng's wife. The room erupted in a cacophony of gasps and whispers. Ryue's carefully constructed facade of innocence crumbled before their eyes. Ryue, her mother breathed, her voice a mix of disbelief and disgust. "What is this?" Ryue stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. Her eyes darted around the room, desperate for an escape from the judgment in everyone's gaze. "Who is that man?" her brother blurted out, his voice a mix of curiosity and disgust. "You have terrible taste, sis." His comment, though insensitive, broke the tension. The room erupted in a fresh wave of whispers, this time laced with judgment and accusation. I stood there, watching the scene unfold with a detached sense of satisfaction. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment their carefully constructed world came crashing down. Ryue's father, his face red with anger and humiliation, stormed towards me. "Chiyunfei," he roared. "What is the meaning of this?" "I think the question is," I replied calmly, meeting his gaze with a steady intensity. "What is the meaning of that?" I gestured towards the phone, where the recording was still playing on loop, a constant reminder of Ryue's betrayal. Ryue's mother, her initial shock giving way to a cold fury, rounded on her daughter. "We raised you better than this," she hissed, her voice shaking with rage. "We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us? By throwing your life away on a married man." Ryue, overwhelmed by the onslaught of accusations, broke down. Tears streamed down her face as she sank to the floor, her sobs echoing through the silent room. "It wasn't like that," she cried, her voice thick with tears. "He lied to me. He said he loved me, that he was going to leave his wife." Her pleas fell on deaf ears. The room had already passed judgment. Her friends, their faces a mixture of pity and disgust, began to make their excuses, eager to distance themselves from the unfolding drama. Ryue's brother, ever the opportunist, saw his chance. "Mom, Dad," he whined. "What about my new job? In the apartment? We were supposed to put down a deposit tomorrow." His words, crass and insensitive, were a stark reminder of the true motivations behind their relationship with me. I felt a surge of disgust. Chapter 8. Severing Ties. The room emptied, leaving behind a heavy silence and the lingering scent of betrayal. Ryue's pleas echoed in my ears, a desperate attempt to salvage a future that had already turned to ashes. But my heart, once overflowing with love for her, was now a cold, hard stone. Her parents lingered, their faces a mixture of shame and desperation. They tried to reason with me, appealing to my sense of duty, my past affection for their daughter. They even offered to increase the dowry, a last-ditch effort to salvage the financial security they so desperately craved. I cut them short, my voice devoid of emotion. "It's over," I said, my words final. "Take her home. I never want to see her again." They left, their shoulders slumped with defeat, their dreams of a comfortable life, funded by their daughter's marriage, dashed against the rocks of her infidelity. Ryue's brother, ever the pragmatist, shot me a venomous glare before following his parents out, his dreams of a cushy job and a new apartment evaporating before his eyes. That night, Ryue bombarded me with messages, each one a desperate plea for forgiveness, a promise to change, a declaration of undying love. I read them all, a strange sense of numbness washing over me. I replied with a single message, cold and devoid of emotion. "If I agreed to marry you now, with no dowry, no apartment, no promises of a comfortable future, would you still accept?" Her response was almost instantaneous, a testament to her desperation. "Yes," she wrote. "I'll do anything to be with you." I laughed, a humorless sound that echoed through the empty apartment. "I don't believe you." I typed back, my fingers hovering over the keys. "And even if I did, it wouldn't change anything. I'm done." I blocked her number, severing the last digital tie that bound us. The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions of my life. The joy and excitement I once felt replaced by a dull ache in my chest. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, haunted by the memory of her betrayal, the sound of her voice whispering another man's name. Ryue's parents tried to contact me a few more times, their pleas growing more desperate with each attempt. They told me Ryue was inconsolable, refusing to eat, wasting away with guilt and heartbreak. I felt a flicker of sympathy, but it was quickly extinguished by a wave of anger and resentment. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with the consequences. I gave them Chun Jifeng's contact information. "He's the one she loves," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Let him deal with this mess." I never heard from them again. Chapter 9. Picking up the pieces. The silence that followed was deafening. No more frantic messages, no more tearful pleas, no more intrusions from Ryue or her family. It was the silence of a clean break, a wound cauterized, leaving behind a scar that throbbed with a dull ache. Life, as it always does, went on. I threw myself into work, finding solace in the familiar rhythm of deadlines and deliverables. I started going to the gym again, the physical exertion a welcome distraction from the turmoil within. My friends, initially walking on eggshells around me, gradually resumed their usual banter. They shared stories of their lives, their triumphs and heartbreaks, reminding me that the world was still spinning, even if mine had momentarily stopped. One evening, over beers and greasy takeout, my friend, Li Wei, broached the subject that had been on everyone's mind. "Have you heard from Ryue?" he asked, his voice hesitant. I shook my head, taking a long swig of my beer. "No," I said, my voice flat. "And I don't want to." "She's not doing so well," Li Wei said, his voice low. "She lost her job, her reputation. Even her parents have washed their hands of her." I felt a pang of sympathy, but it was quickly replaced by a wave of weariness. "She made her bed," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Now she has to lie in it. Don't you feel even a little bit sorry for her?" Li Wei pressed, his brow furrowed. "She messed up, but you were about to marry her. There had to be some love there." "Love?" I scoffed, the word leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. "She called me an ATM, Li Wei. An ATM? She never loved me. She loved what I could give her." Li Wei sighed, his shoulders slumping. "I guess you're right," he conceded. "But still, it's hard to believe she threw away everything for a fling with that sleazeball." "He wasn't just a fling," I said, my voice tight. "They had been seeing each other for months. She was playing us both for fools." The thought of their betrayal, the intimacy they had shared in my own car, sent a fresh wave of anger coursing through me. "I heard Chen Jifeng is in deep shit," Li Wei said, breaking through my thoughts. "His wife took him to the cleaners in the divorce, and now the company is suing him for embezzlement. He might even end up in jail." I couldn't help but feel a sense of grim satisfaction. Karma, it seemed, was a dish best served cold. "What about Ryue?" I asked, my voice betraying a hint of curiosity despite my best efforts. "She's living with her aunt," Li Wei said, his voice low. "I heard she's been going on a lot of blind dates, trying to find another rich husband to take care of her." I laughed, a humorless sound that echoed through the room. "Some things never change," I said, shaking my head. Li Wei clapped a hand on my shoulder, his expression sympathetic. "Don't let her win, man," he said, his voice earnest. "You're better off without her." He was right. I knew it in my head, even if my heart hadn't quite caught up yet. I had loved Ryue, or at least a version of her she had allowed me to see. But that love was gone, replaced by a dull ache and a newfound determination to move on. I had survived heartbreak before, and I would survive this. I would pick up the pieces of my life, piece by shattered piece, and build something stronger, something real. Chapter 10. Moving on. Months passed, each one a step further away from the wreckage of my past. The pain dulled, the memories fading into a distant echo. I poured myself into my work, finding solace in the challenges and triumphs of my career. I reconnected with old friends, rediscovering the joy of shared laughter and genuine connection. Life, I realized, was too short to waste on those who didn't value me, who saw me as a means to an end. I deserved better, a love that was built on trust, respect, and genuine affection, not on manipulation and deceit. One sunny afternoon, while enjoying a cup of coffee in my favorite cafe, I saw her, Ryue. She was sitting alone at a table across the room, her posture slumped, her eyes fixed on her phone. She looked different, older, the youthful vibrancy replaced by a weary sadness. My initial reaction was a surge of anger, a visceral reminder of the pain she had caused. But as I watched her, a strange sense of detachment washed over me. The woman across the room felt like a stranger, a ghost from a past life. She looked up, her eyes scanning the room, and our gazes met. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes, followed by a wave of shame and regret. She started to get up, her hand reaching out as if to speak, but I stopped her with a shake of my head. The years of hurt, the betrayal, the wasted time, it all came flooding back. I didn't need an explanation, an apology, or another tearful plea. I had heard it all before. I simply smiled, a genuine smile that reached my eyes for the first time in a long time, and turned my attention back to my coffee. She hesitated for a moment, her hand still outstretched, then slowly lowered herself back into her chair, her shoulders slumping with defeat. I didn't look back. Later that day, Li Wei called, his voice a mix of amusement and disbelief. "You'll never guess who tried to set me up on a blind date," he said, chuckling. "Let me guess," I replied, a smile playing on my lips. "Ryue, the one and only," Li Wei confirmed. "Apparently, she's been telling everyone that you're still hung up on her, that you're devastated by the breakup." I laughed, a genuine laugh this time, free from bitterness or regret. "Let her think what she wants," I said, my voice light. "I'm doing just fine." And I was. I had a fulfilling career, a close circle of friends, and a newfound appreciation for the simple joys of life. I was no longer the naive fool who had fallen for a pretty face and a carefully constructed facade. I had learned my lesson, a painful but necessary one. And in the process, I had rediscovered myself stronger and wiser than before. The future stretched before me, full of possibilities. And this time, I was ready to face it on my own terms, with my heart open to genuine love, not a counterfeit version.